It's your open source advocate, and I'm back with another video. And today I wanted to talk about identity, policy, and audit. So we have FreeIPA, and FreeIPA is an incredible, powerful identity and policy management system. It is really aimed at Linux. So if you're coming from the Windows world, you're probably used to the domain controller and Active Directory and being able to set policies and do all those things, which is awesome. It's awesome for Windows users, it's awesome for admins for Windows. But in the Linux world, this existed, but it was very much CLI based, it was very much terminal based, and FreeIPA really gives you a nice web user interface to do a lot of this stuff on top of that. It helps you get LDAP set up in a much more scripted, easy way. Let's just say it that way. And then you can actually combine this with something like Authentic, so that then Authentic can be your credential provider, so that you've got this single sign-on set of credentials for OpenID Connect or OAuth, for SAML, for LDAP, for all the different things that you may be needing people to log in with, and they can use those same credentials to log into multiple different applications. So it is that true kind of single sign-on type feel. Now, when we talk about LDAP, that's an authentication platform. Basically, it just really provides all of that necessary information that you want to get from an identity server. It also provides that framework for setting up what you can access, what permissions you have, and keeping track of who did what and when they did it. So it's really a very nice system, but it does take some setup. I'm probably going to cover setting up just the FreeIPA server and a client on this video, but I do want to get into using FreeIPA with Authentic and how to set that up. I do want to get into using FreeIPA for LDAP on other applications as well. So we'll be using it in future videos where I'm setting up some LDAP authentication so that we're using our authentic credentials to do those things. And the other part is I'm going to set up my FreeIPA server as part of my Netbird network as well, my VPN network, because I want this to be on a local network, but I need it to be available to systems that are outside of my local network, and I don't want to expose it directly to the internet. So I'm going to set this up on my VPN, my Wireguard VPN, where I use Netbird for that. And I'll show you how to do that as well. It's really pretty straightforward for all of these steps. We're going to go through them together, and it's going to be really great. Before I get into all of those things, I want to say thank you so much to my patrons over at Patreon. It's because of you guys that I get to keep doing this, that I get to keep pushing this forward, and that you're supporting open source in the process is amazing. And I can't say thank you enough for the support, the continued support, and for just making this channel possible. You guys are the rock stars, and you are the true stars of this channel, so thank you so very much. To anybody who's done buy me a beer or buy me a coffee over at PayPal, man, I truly appreciate it. It brightens up my day when I see those little notifications come through like you just wouldn't believe. And man, it makes a bad day seem so much better a lot of times, and I truly, truly appreciate that. It makes a hard day where I've struggled with something. I mean, I've been working on this FreeIPA stuff now for about 16 hours just to get it down to the point that I felt like I could give it to you guys, so truly appreciate that. For all my subscribers over at YouTube, thank you so much. It really means a lot, and it helps the channel grow. It helps other people find incredible open source software. It just means the world. And if you haven't done so already, go down and click on that subscribe button, click on that thumbs up for the video, click on the little bell so you get notifications when I put out other videos on amazing open source software. I've got over 200 videos on open source software, incredible, powerful software that you can put to use for yourself, for your company, for your friends, for your family today. So get out there and make sure you subscribe. Thank you so much. Now let's get into FreeIPA. Getting started with FreeIPA, we need a server. Now I'm going to be using a CentOS Stream 9 server. Feel free to use whatever you want as long as it has a FreeIPA server package available. It should work about the same, but I know that it's really aimed at the Red Hat family of products. So for the server side, I recommend either Red Hat Enterprise Linux or CentOS Stream 9 or maybe Alma Linux or Fedora, but highly recommend one of those as your server just to make things easier, and hopefully it'll go as smooth as what we're going to do here. I've got my CentOS 9 server here. Now I'm going to have my editor just zoom in on this part here for this part of the video so you can see better what I'm typing. I can't really adjust the font. There's a couple things we need to do. This is a fresh server. All I've done is get the root account set up. There is no other account set up on here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to just add a user. So I'm going to do add user And I'm going to give them a username of Brian. You would put in your username. And it creates the user and it creates a home directory. So if we do ls/home, you'll see that there's already a Brian folder there. So it does that, but I also need to give Brian a password. So we're going to do PASSWD and then space, and then the username you want to set the password for. If you just do this and you hit enter, you're going to be changing the password for your root user. So don't do that unless you mean to. You always want to tell it what user are you changing the password for. So in this case, it's for Brian. So I'm going to enter a password. And I'm going to do it one more time, and it's going to tell me, hey, that's a crappy password, but don't worry, I'm going to destroy this after we're done with this video, so it's not a big deal. So I've got my stuff set up, but I'm not yet a super user. So now I'm going to do user mod-a capital G, and on the CentOS, Red Hat, Fedora family, if you want to be the super user, you have to be in the group called Wheel, W-H-E-E-L. And then after that, I'm going to put in my username, and that tells it, hey, change this person, add them to the group Wheel, and tell them who it is. That's me, Brian. In your case, you'd put your username. There we go. I should now be part of the super user group. Now, because I'm using a container, an Incus container for my CentOS Stream 9, it doesn't have SSH set up yet. It doesn't have Nano, which I like as the text editor yet. So I'm going to add those things real quick. So we're just going to do DNF install. And we're going to do nano and open SSH-server. And it'll go out and kind of look for those things, and it'll come back and tell us like, okay, I see them. And it's going to go through the process to get those things ready. So we'll give it just a second. There it is. It's like, do you want to install these? It's going to take up a few megabytes. Yes, I do. It should be pretty quick to get those done. Yeah, they're done. Okay, so they're installed. Now, on Debian Ubuntu systems, when you install OpenSSH Server, generally it just starts the service for you, at least on Ubuntu for sure. On this system, we have to start the service, so we're just going to do sudo, we don't have to do sudo, we can do systemctl start, and we're going to do sshd for the SSH daemon, and it should just come back like that with no output, and then we're going to do systemctl enable sshd, just to enable it so that the next time we reboot, it'll come back on by itself, and we can just check the status of it with systemctl status sshd, and it should come up and tell us that it's active, which it does right there. So we're set, we're doing good, we've got SSH set up. Now the last thing I need to know is what IP address did I get for this server. So I can do IP-BR-4A, and right here I can see my private IP address, which is that right there. It looks like 103, and I can go and SSH into this from the desktop system that I'm using now, and that'll make it where I can enlarge the font and make things a lot easier for you guys. So let's go do that. I'm going to open up a new terminal, and I'm going to do SSH and my username at that IP address, which was 192.168.10.103, and I'll say yes, I trust the fingerprint, and then I'll give it my password for that user, and we are now logged in. You can see I'm logged into this machine called IPA. Now, there's a few things that we need to do to get this machine ready and for us to run FreeIPA on it. We could just go do the IPA install. It would probably work, but it would just be a mess because later it would fix. I've got DHCP set up on this. We don't want that. We want a static IP address. I haven't set up the host name correctly. We want to set up the host name correctly. I haven't even run the updates. So the first thing we should do is do DNF update. And sudo DNF update. I'm not logged in as root anymore, so we have to give it the sudo command, and it's going to ask us for our super user password, and it's going to say exception check, go, dependency received, nothing to do. Okay, so we're up to date. At least we're up to date. That's great. Now let's do a couple of things here. First, we need to set our host name, so we can check our host name with hostnamectl, just like that. And it's going to tell us, okay, here's your host name, it's IPA, and it's running in a container, and it's Linux, and it tells us everything we need to know about that. But we don't want it to just be IPA. We want it to be IPA.something.something so that it's a proper domain name. Now, you probably want to set a local domain name. You don't have to. You can use a fully qualified out there on the internet .com type domain name if you want to. I'm not going to do that because I don't want this to be exposed to the internet. I want this to be something that my internal users can do either over the VPN or from inside the network. So I'm going to set one that's a .local. Now, a lot of people say, don't use .local. That's a Windows thing. It works fine. It's up to you guys. If you want to use something different, you can use .loc. You can use, I don't know, all kinds of things. Go look up the ones that people say you can use all the time that aren't top level domains for the internet. Up to you completely. So I'm going to set this up. We're going to say, we're going to change our host name. We're going to do hostname CTL. Then we're going to tell it, I want the host name. So we're going to type hostname, and we're going to make this IPA dot, and let's make this OSIA.local. Okay, now you just need to keep in mind, this is the domain that you're setting for your server, OSIA.local. So any clients you set up will need to also be able to be on this domain. So you're going to want to set them to this domain. If you already have a bunch of clients that are set up on a domain, you want to use that domain so that you can get them to connect properly whenever it's time. Okay, so just keep this in mind. So we're going to set that. It's just going to go, oh, you can't do that because, again, I'm supposed to be sudo. There we go. And now if we do our hostname CTL command again, we should see that we've got this, which is awesome. All right, the next thing we want to do is set a static IP address. This is not the most straightforward way to do things, but it's the way that I know of, and they use NM, which is Network Manager CLI. So the NM CLI, it'll give you a bunch of information about your current network connection. Up to you to say, yep, that's what I want, or no, I didn't want that IP address. I want this one to be in sequence, and the next one is this. Whatever you need, we need to go in and set it to be a static IP address. So I'm just going to hit Control-C, and we'll clear that out. And we're just going to do a few commands to actually set this up and get it running in the right direction here. Oh, one of the things you should notice in MCLI, real quick one more time, is the name of this connection. So mine is wired connection 1. I'm going to need this in order to set this, so pay attention to where it says connected to and then what this name is. That's going to be important for you as well. So again, we can Control-C that. So we're going to do NMCLI, and we're going to just do connection modify, and then we've got to give it that connection name, wired connection 1. So if you can change that to something shorter, it would probably benefit you, but it works. IPv4.addresses, and we're going to do 192.168.10.103/24, because the one it picked from DHCP is fine. I don't need to change it, but if you need to change it, this is the time where you would do it. The /24 just says that this machine can talk to any other machine on this subnet. It should be able to see any other machine on that subnet. If I didn't want that, or I wanted more machines, you know, if I wanted to be able to see all the machines on this subnet, then I would put /16 there. I don't need that. We're just going to stick with 24. So I'm going to hit enter. Again, sudo is going to be important here. Sorry, sudo. There we go. You should get like nothing back if it works. If you get an error like I did above, you probably needed the sudo. So next thing is sudo nm CLI connection modify, and then wired connection 1 and IPv4.gateway. And then for my gateway, I know that my gateway address is 192.168.10.1. You should make sure you have the correct gateway address. And then I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to change this gateway to DNS, and it's also 192.168.10.1, and then enter. And the next thing we need to do is our DNS search. So again, we can just hit up arrow and it saves us a little bit of typing. So we can do DNS-search, and we're going to do SRV.world, which just says, hey, it's okay to go out to the internet and do things. If you don't want this to do that, you need to figure out which SRV you want, but we're going to do that. And then we're going to set our IPv4.method as manual. So this just says, hey, I don't want you to go out and get a DHCP address in the future. I want you to stick with the one I'm giving you. I'm setting it manually. And then we're going to take down our connection and bring our connection back up. So we're going to do sudo nmcli, and I think we have to do down wired connection 1, and then semicolon sudo nmcli up wired connection 1. Now you would of course replace wired connection 1, whatever your connection is called, but the same thing, nmcli down, your connection name, and then semicolon nmcli up, your connection name. And let's see, down, oh, down, not understood. Did I do that wrong? Oh, nmcli connection down, that's my fault. We need the term connection in there. Apologize, and we're going to need it over here as well. So it should be sudo nmcli connection down wired connection 1 semicolon sudo nmcli connection up wired connection 1. It's very verbose commands here, and it tells us successfully deactivated, and then it gives us a bunch of information, and then over here it says successfully activated, which means it came back up. So now if we do IP-BR-4A, we should still see that we've got this 113 IP address, which is good. We should be able to ping our just gateway here, assuming you allow pinging. It does work. And then we should be able to ping something on the internet. So we can ping google.com. Yes, it works. So we've got our connection set, and it is now static. So we've got our host name set. We've got our connection set, but we need to change something in our etc host file. We're going to do sudo nano /etc/hosts. And right here, we've got this loopback address. That's this one that says 127.0.1.1. We don't need that address. So we can do Control K to get rid of that entire line. We're just going to hit enter. And right above it here, we're going to put in the address we just entered for our static address, 192.168.10.103. We're just going to hit tab. We're going to do ipa.osia.local. And then tab one more time, and we're going to hit IPA, because this is our host name with our domain and then our host name. So we're going to just set like that, and then we'll come back and we'll change this or add this in a little bit when we set up our Netbird stuff as well. We'll just add another line above it with the same stuff here, where it's the same host name, domain, and then host name, but we'll put the IP address that we get from Netbird also. So we're going to hit Control O and enter to save, Control X to exit, and now our etc host file is set, and everything that we're wanting to get done before we go and actually install the FreeIPA stuff is done. All right, now we're actually going to install the package for the FreeIPA server. So we're going to do sudo dnf install FreeIPA altogether -server and then -y. Now this is going to install a lot of stuff, and it's going to take a minute. Be patient. We'll be back when it's completed, but you shouldn't get any errors. You should get everything installed without any problems. It's going to say, hey, here's a bunch of stuff, and you'll see it scrolling up the screen. So just be patient while it goes through this, because it's going to take a little bit. All right, once it completes, it's going to give you a list of all the packages that it installed, which is a ton, and you should see a term that says complete right here. Now, I'm going to clear this. We can check to make sure it's installed by using the IPA-version command. So IPA space -- version. And we should get back a version and then the API version, so we'll know that everything is set. Doing great. The next thing we got to do is actually configure FreeIPA. So we're going to do another command. It's going to look like install, but it's actually not the install command. It's actually just telling us, hey, I want to configure IPA or FreeIPA. So we're going to do sudo IPA server install. It's going to ask this about DNS. I am not setting up the DNS. I already used something else for DNS. If you're going to use this for DNS, then you'll want to answer YES here. In my case, I'm not going to do that. And it's going to tell us there's a few things that it tells us here. It's going to configure a standalone CA. It's going to configure the NTP client. We're actually not going to let it do that, but it's going to try create and configure an instance of our directory server, create and configure a Kerberos key distribution server, configure Apache, which we do want, and configure SID generation, and then KDC to enable PK init. So there's a whole bunch of things that it does in order to get things set up that we need. We're just going to say, do you want to configure integrated DNS? We're just going to leave it on no. We're just going to hit, so anything in square brackets is the default answer. So I'm just going to hit enter. It's going to say, enter the fully qualified domain name of this machine, the computer on which you're setting up the server software. So it's hostname.domainname. So remember, we just set that up. So that's going to be ipa.osia.local. So make sure you type yours correctly. And you see it found it. So actually we could have just hit enter because it's already in square brackets. And in fact, I'll go back and do that just so I don't mistype something. But if yours is already here in square brackets, you can just hit enter. It's going to take that. It's going to say the domain name has been determined based on the host name, which is osia.local. This is correct for me. So make sure yours is correct for you. And the next thing is to do is set the realm. That's just going to be your domain name in all caps. So make sure it looks correct again, and then just hit enter. If it's not, type in the correct thing. And then it's going to ask you to set up a directory manager password. I highly recommend that you go and actually create one out of something like Bitwarden and then use that here, because if you don't do that, you're going to have problems. Let's just put it that way. So I'm going to go create one for Directory Manager, and I'm going to just paste it in here. And one more time, I'm going to confirm it. Now it wants the IPA admin password. So the same thing, I recommend you go set this up in something like Bitwarden where you'll have it. And I'm going to paste one in. And now it wants to know about the NetBIOS domain name OSIA. That's fine. There's nothing for me to change. If yours is the kind of middle part of your host name, should be good. Do you want to configure Crony? And the answer is no. So I'm just going to take the default. I don't do this. There's other NTP servers to set up. It's finally going to give you a summary, like, hey, here's all the things that we're about to set up on this system. Is this really what you want to do? Now, if you look, it's defaulted to no, but we actually do want to do this if everything looks correct. So ipa.osia.local, yes. IP address is correct. osia.local, osia.local, in all caps, yes. Certificate authority, we're going to use O equals osia.local, that's correct. Down here, osia.local, and again, self-signed certificate is fine. We'll deal with that, don't worry. So we're going to type YES, and then we're going to hit enter. It's going to start this configuration process, and again, this could take a while. Be very patient. The system has to work through it. Just let it run, and when it's done, you can come back to the video. All right, once it's complete, you might see a couple of weird things. So this says IPA client install command was successful. I don't think I typed IPA client install. Let's just make sure. Nope, I typed IPA server install, so maybe that's just a bad message. Also, invalid IP address, that's fine. It's an IPv6 address. I'm not worried about that. And it says, please add records in this file to your DNS system. So again, if we have DNS set up, you want to go check that out. Nothing that I need. And then it's going to tell you setup complete and the next steps. It says, you must make sure that these network ports are open. So this is talking about the firewall. So this is really important. So you want to copy this and put it somewhere where you can access it. So we will just grab this. It says be sure to back up the certificates stored in root here. And then the files are required to create replicas. The password for these files is in the directory manager password, as the directory manager password. And then it says successful. So I'm just going to copy all of this with Control-Shift-C. And I'm going to just go and paste it into one of these other terminals that I've got open. It's nothing that I have to keep long term, but I do want to have it for just a minute. So, all right, so we need to set up the firewall. Now, I'm running this on an Incus container, so FirewallD is not even installed, I don't believe. So let's do sudo systemctl FirewallD, and we'll put in my password again. And it tells us the service couldn't even be found, so it's not installed. So we need to install that. If you haven't, if you run this command and it comes up and says, hey, it's active and running, that's great. Hold on, and then we'll set up those ports that we need. But first, we're going to set up this. I'm going to install this. I'm going to do sudo dnf install FirewallD. Yes, I want to do that. It's going to go grab all the things that it needs and get the firewall installed. This is really important for something for like an IPA server. You don't want to be running this without a firewall. Now that we've got that, we want to start the firewall service. So we'll do sudo systemctl start FirewallD. And then we're going to do the same thing, but instead of start, we're going to put enable. So again, it will start whenever we reboot the system. And we can check the status just to make sure that it's running. And we should see active, which we see right there, which is great. All right, so now we need to set up some exceptions on our ports for this as well. So we'll go through and get that set. So let's do list services, and we can see what services there are running. So we can say firewall. Let's see if we can do this without sudo. Nope, it's going to make us use sudo. Oh, and I need to put a dash. Maybe that's why. Yeah, so we still need sudo. So we'll go here, Control-A, sudo. There we go. So we can see that it's got some things running for Cockpit, for DHCP v6 client, and for SSH, which is fine. But we need to add some other things. So let's just also do list ports. And there's no ports currently listed. So we're going to do sudo firewall cmd-cmd-add-port, and then we're going to do equals. We'll open a little curly brace here because we can put in multiple ports this way. And we're going to do 80, 443. They had a whole list, 389, 636, so 389, comma, 636, comma, 88, 464, and 53. Just like that, and we'll put /TCP. And it should have added those. We can check our ports now, and you can see it's got all those ports, and they're listed as /TCP. And we're going to do the same command, except this time we're going to do a few different ports. We're going to do 88, 464, 53, and 123. So 88, 464, 53, 123, and then a curly brace /UDP here. And again, if we do the list ports, now we should see all of our TCP and UDP ports listed there. So we've got our ports set, our firewall's up and running, which is awesome. That's great. Now we're ready to initialize our admin. So we're going to do KINIT admin. Let's just see if it requires me to do it with sudo. And it's going to ask us for the admin OSI local password. So that's that password we created earlier. So make sure, again, you've got something like Bitwarden going, and grab that admin password, copy it, and then we're going to shift paste. And it should be set with our init, which is awesome. All right, let's add a user that's not the admin user. So we're going to do this from the command line. Now you can do this from the web user interface, and I'll show you that in just a little bit. But first, I just thought let's just do this from the command line first, just to get one user added. So let's do IPA user-add, and then the username you want. So mine's going to be Brian. We're going to say -- password, so it'll prompt us for a password for this user in a minute. And then we're going to do -- home dir equals /home/Brian. That's what I want my home directory to be. And then we're also going to do -- shell equals /bin/bash. So you've got all these things, but you can do this all from the GUI, which makes it much easier. But in this case, we're just doing the first one, and I'll show you. And there's a lot more arguments you could add and do things with, so you can check out the documentation for that stuff. But this is a good start. So we're going to hit enter. And it's going to ask me for the first name, Brian, and it wants my password. And I think it's going to show this in plain text, so I'm just going to use a really crappy one, but again, I'm getting rid of this after a while. Oh, and it's not going to show it, so that's okay. Something like that. And here it's going to show us the user login is Brian, lowercase. Here's my first name, last name. Here's my display name. So we've got a bunch of stuff, but if you look here, it gets down here to the alias and name, password expiration. And then right here, it's got this email. This is not my email address. And if I want to use my correct email address, I can do that. And I can do that right here from the command line. It's not that hard. We're going to use the same type of command. So we're going to do IPA user, but -mod, mod. Instead of add, we're going to do mod, so modify. And again, we're going to tell it what user, and then we give -- email equals Brian at, and I'll put fixitdelrio.com. Make sure I type it correctly. And it's going to fix that, and now you can see it's got the email address that is correct, which is awesome. So we've got a lot of really great information going here. Let's just close this or clear that out. Now, before I finish, let's go actually install our Netbird stuff, and we'll get that set up as well. So let's see, we'll go here, and I'm going to go to my Netbird install. It's going to authenticate me using Authentic. There we go. All right, so with Netbird, it's not super complicated to add a system to Netbird. That's the great thing about it. So I'm just going to click on this little button here. It's going to say, hey, here's your stuff you need to install the Netbird software. So we'll click on that first, and we'll go back here, and we're just going to do Control-Shift-V to paste in that command. And it's going to go grab everything it needs. It's going to get Netbird installed. While that's installing, I can go here and grab the command to add my Netbird. And again, I'll get rid of this machine afterwards, so don't sweat that you're going to see things like the keys and stuff like that. And I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to do Control-Shift-V. I'm going to just put --setup-key equals, and then I'm going to go grab a setup key from Netbird. So we're going to go here, I'm just going to close that window. I'm going to go over here to my setup keys. I'm going to add a new setup key. And I'm going to call this IPA test so I can find it again later. And it's going to say, do I want it to be a reusable key? No. Is it valid for 7 days? Yes. If I just need it to be valid for today, I can just bring this down to 1 day. It's fine. I don't need it to be ephemeral, and DNS labels, I don't need it to allow extra DNS labels. I think it's okay. And then I need to put it in a group, so I'm going to put it in my home group for now. And I'm just going to click on create. It's going to generate a key. I'm going to copy that key. I'm going to go back to my terminal, and I'm just going to paste that key in right there. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to reach out there and say, hey, Netbird, let me connect. And I can see that it's connected now. And I can even do Netbird status here. And it's going to tell me that I'm connected, and it's going to show me the IP address that it's given me. So in this case, it's given me this IP address right here. I'm going to do Control-Shift-C to copy that. And I'm going to do sudo nano/etc/host. So remember, we made this change earlier where we added our IP address. I'm going to do the same thing with that Netbird IP address. I'm going to do ipa.osia.local and then tab IPA, just like that. I'm going to hit Control-O to save and Control-X to exit. And now I've added my Netbird VPN to my server. As I'm adding machines, if I add those to my Netbird VPN, I can use that VPN to reach the server instead of a local IP address, but it's also not a publicly accessible IP address, which is awesome. It lets me have LDAP for any machines that I need, but I don't have to be on the same network. It's really a great way to do this in a much more secure way than making it exposed to the internet. All right, we've done that part. We've configured our server. We've added a user to our server. The next thing is to jump into the web UI and look at some of the settings and stuff. But then we're going to actually go set up a client to be able to connect to our server as well. And I'll show you kind of what that looks like from the web UI so you can tell, like, did my client get registered properly before we even try to log in from it. This video is sponsored by me. That's right. Did you know that I wrote a novel? I did. And it's a science fiction novel. It follows a guy named Dave, who's a pretty normal guy with a normal job, who happens to fall into a little bit of a less normal job, but doesn't realize it. He goes on some incredible adventures. He has some really cool things that he has to get done. It's just a passion project. I think you're going to love it. It's an action. It's an adventure. It's just so much fun. I understand if you don't want to do Patreon or PayPal, but maybe you'd like to get something out of some money that you're donating back to me. So by buying a book, you're paying me back, and at the same time, you're getting something out of it. You can jump over to Amazon. I'll have links in the description. You can jump over and get the ebook, the paperback, or the hardcover. I'll have links for as many countries as I can get links for, so no matter where you are, you can get a copy of the book. It is English only. It has not been translated. I just do want to put that out there, but I hope you'll get it. I hope you'll enjoy it, and let me know that you enjoyed it as well. Now let's get back to the program. All right, so I've got my browser open, and we're just going to go to the actual page that we're trying to reach. So if you don't have things set up correctly in your DNS, which I don't, it's probably not going to work, but we're going to go to ipa.osia.local, and you can see that we're going to get this error, and we can even try it with HTTPS, which is what we should be doing anyways. So https://ipa.osia.local, and again, it's not going to resolve because I haven't set it up in my DNS. So I can just do something really easy, and we'll just go and open up a new tab here or a new file. And let's just do nano sudo, nano. And this is on my local machine. So on this machine that I'm physically working on, I'm going to go edit the host file. And what I'll do is just add another entry here on the IPv4 section. And I'm going to make that ipa.osia.local and then tab IPA. So you can see here that I've got two different servers. I got the one that I've been working on, and then I've got this one that I've just set up with you guys. So that's going to just Control-O to save, Control-X to exit. And now I can close this one. And if I go back here, I can just refresh. Let's see if that'll work. Well, I put /local. I guess it would help if I put .local. There we go. So now we're going to get our security risk warning because it's a self-signed certificate. Of course, we created it, so we can accept that. and then we'll move forward. Now, this is where we get into FreeIPA. So you're going to see that this says CentOS Identity Management. It's the same concept. What we're going to do is we're going to log in with this admin user. We could log in with our user that we just created, but they're not going to have many privileges, and what we need to do is some administrative work. So we're going to do admin, and you need to go grab that password from your password manager for your admin user, and I'll grab it real quick and just paste it in there. And you should always have a long, strong password for these types of things. And when you come to this page, this is what it's going to look like. Now, this is very small, so I'm going to blow it up. Just keep in mind, this is what it generally looks like. For you guys with good vision, this is probably fine. It's a little bit small for me, so I'm going to go way bigger than I need even, but I want it to be something where if you guys are on your cell phones, things like that, watching, hopefully you can read some of this stuff. So here we've got our admin, which is our administrator, and you can see that it's got some details, and then we've got the user that we just created. Now, we're going to go into our active users. And if we click on that user, you'll see we've got these tabs at the top where we can do a whole lot of different things. So I've gone into basically identity and users. And then I clicked on the user Brian. And then down here, we've got more things that we can set up. So under roles, we can go here and I can add my user to different roles. So just depending on what you want. Now, this is just a role. Now, these roles have permissions assigned to them. So you can have the enrollment administrator, a help desk person, IT. Now, these are just some roles that they've created. You can create as many roles as you want and assign permissions to those roles and add that user to those roles. But we also have user groups. So here you can see I'm a part of the general IPA users. This is the group that everybody gets assigned to when they're first created. In here, we've also got admins, editors, and trust admins. So I'm going to add myself to all three of these groups. And when I check those boxes, I'm just going to click the little right arrow to move it over here. And I'm going to click on add. And now my user is part of this administrative users group. And I could actually go in and do administrative work in here instead of having to log in as the admin user if I don't want to. Now that said, as we go through, we can create other users. So we can go back to the users, the active users, and we can see what all we have. So we first of all got this thing to say refresh. I want to refresh my users. Okay, didn't help. I could delete a user. Now I can add a user from here. So if you're not going to set this up with Authentic, if you're just going to use FreeIPA straight up, then this is where you want to be. And you can add a user. It's very simple. You give them a user login. Now, I suggest you come up with a pattern if it's a large organization. If it's just your family, you could probably use first name or middle name or nickname or whatever you guys call each other. If you're setting something up for organization or set of organizations, you probably want to do something more like first name dot last name or first name underscore last name, something like that. So in my case, I would be Brian.McGonagill. And then you'd say first name, last name, and then class, I don't mess with, nothing really to do there. No private group, you don't need. The GID will get auto-created, so if you just leave that blank, it'll auto-create. Then you're going to give them a password and a verify password. Now, you can make this a fairly weak password initially if you're going to have them log in right away as soon as you create them. If not, you might want to make it a strong password, but you want to keep track of that password because you're going to give that to the user. And the first time they log in from somewhere, it's going to prompt them to create a new password. So this is their password you're giving them, but the system's going to prompt them to create a new password that you don't know. And that's a security measure. So just keep in mind that this is how you would create the user. Now you can do add the user and then edit. So I'm already in here. I don't want to add myself again. Let's just add a user called bob.test, and his first name is Bob, his last name is Test. And again, we don't need to give him any of the other stuff except a password, so I'll give him a password. And then we'll go here to add and edit. So what happens is Bob gets added. Now I could put in Bob's title. He's the sales executive. We can go on down and you can see we've got most of Bob's information. Now it puts Bob's initials here, so if that's good, great. If they use different initials, fill that in. It's up to you. And then again, you've got this class section. Over here, you're going to see that Bob is user login. He's got a password. You can go in and reset his password from here, and then he would have to go in and actually do the password reset somewhere else. So there's a lot of things you can put, but you can also put here, like if you've got any Kerberos information, the login shell, I don't want it to be SH. I do want it to be bash instead. So I can change that right there for bin bash. This is going to create his home folder as /home/bob.test. Great. If he has SSH public keys, you could put them here. Any kind of key stuff, certificates, things like that. And then if you want him to use different authentication types or allow different authentication types, you can set up password, radius, two-factor authentication. Lots of things you can set here for this user, and you can do that on a user-by-user basis. Radius, proxy, all kinds of things for radius. And then you've got these different ticket policies. So a lot of little things that you can go in and edit. The biggest thing for me is like maybe you want to add their street address, and then it's going to create an email for them that again is not going to be correct. It's up here somewhere, or it's in here somewhere, but you may want to go edit their email address as well, just depending on what you're going to have them use for login purposes, but it's worthwhile for you to do that. Now this could be the organizational unit, which is sales, and again, who's his manager? Let's just say his manager is Jim. Well, we don't have that. You have to pick somebody from the list, so I'm his manager. Okay, great. If he has a department number, you can add that. If he has an employee number, employee type, preferred language, a lot of different information you could add for these folks. So again, something worthwhile for you to go through and check out. And then once you're done, you can just come up here and click on save. That's going to save all the information you just edited for Bob, and Bob has the opportunity to go log in. It'll ask him to change that password he created. So again, don't forget that password that you've created for them, or you'll have to come in and just redo it. You're just creating work for yourself, essentially. Now there are policies. So you have access control, host-based access control. So what's going to happen is we're going to register our different computers with this FreeIPA system, and then you can say when I'm coming from this system, I can access certain things. But if I'm coming from another system on a different network, maybe I can only access one or two things. So you have that host-based access control that you can set up here, and it's worthwhile for you to go through and kind of look at that and understand it, because it may not be something you need today, but eventually you might need it. You've also got this sudo commands and sudo rules. So as a rule, if you're in the sudo group on a system, you have access to anything that root can do for the most part. Here, you can set up a user and say, you know what, I'm going to set up a different set of sudo command groups. And within those groups, I'm going to assign some sudo commands that certain people may need to be able to run. So maybe you have a developer and he needs to be able to run the sudo command to restart Apache once in a while because he's developing and he's got Apache installed. If he doesn't need every sudo command on the planet, you can go in and set up that he can restart the Apache service, and he can restart the Nginx service, and he can restart some other kind of service that may have something to do with anything he's doing for development. And then you can actually go in and set up a role that says, in this role, so maybe developer sudo or something like that, I'm going to create a role called developer sudo, and I'm going to give them those sudo commands that they need as developers, and then you assign that role to that user. And now that user has the ability to run those commands only. They can't do everything that root could do. They can only do the things you're allowing them to do. So that's a really nice way to have some pretty strong control over what a user can do to the system. It can help keep you from having to give them full root access so they don't blow up their system for one thing, so they don't really mess it up by accident just because they don't know what they're doing, but they may need access to some things that a sudo user can do. If you're going to be using SE Linux, you can set up SE Linux user maps. You can also set up your password policies. There's already one here. It's kind of the global policy, but you can go in and create your own password policy. So you can say it needs to be 12 characters or more. It has to have upper lowercase numbers and symbols. Here's how many of each of those things it has to have. You can go through and set up those policies to make sure that people are keeping their passwords nice and strong. So very useful there as well. Here's your Kerberos ticket policies, and then you've got your passkey configuration if you need to set up passkey stuff as well. On the authentication side, you've got a lot of certificate information here that gets generated, and you can go through and grab these certificates for different things, but knowing about these certificates and what they are mapped to is also useful. So as you're setting up things with LDAP, you may need to know some of this stuff. So it's worthwhile knowing that you can come here and see this for your certificates. You've also got certificate profiles. You've got your certificate authority ACLs, and then your certificate authorities themselves. You've got one-time password tokens that you can set up. Again, I'm going to be using Authentic, so I would use the TOTP that's already built into that for multi-factor authentication. But if you want a radius server, you can set up a radius server to be used with FreeIPA. Identity provider references, so not something I'm using, but worthwhile knowing that you can go and set this up. And then you've got your certificate identity mapping rules. So again, you've got a few different things here, but you can set up your identity mapping rules, your identity mapping global configuration, and your identity mapping match. So if you're trying to match your certificates, you can go in and set up how that's going to match and how it's going to work. When we come to the, let's go back to authentication real quick. Sorry, I think we covered everything there. Yes. When we come down to network services, you basically have auto mount. So am I going to auto mount a network share for these users, and where is that and how is it going to be mounted? You're saving them some effort by automatically setting this up and saying, you know what, I've got an NFS share, I've got a Samba share or something like that that needs to be auto mounted when they log into a machine. You can also set it to create them a home directory on that machine. It caches their credentials in case this system is not available for some reason when they try to go log in. So there's a lot of different things that you can set up, which is great. The IPA server itself, so you've got role-based access control. So what can each of these roles do? And then if you're creating roles, what can those roles do? You've got your ID ranges that you can set up. It's not something that I change, but do know that you do have the ability to go in here and do that. You've got realm domains. So these realms that you create can allow people to log in for different purposes and can kind of allow you to categorize where people are logging into or for what reason. It's not really a multi-tenant system, but this kind of gives you a little bit of flexibility around what realms you're setting up. You can also have trusts and then global trust configuration. So a trust is generally machine to machine where you're saying, hey, or network to network, like, hey, we're going to exchange certificates and our network can talk over the internet and we're going to trust each other and it's cool. It's not hard to set up, but I really use a VPN to do something like that these days. Topology, again, if you've got different IPA servers, you can see that topology and kind of get things set up for that topology. For where all those IPA servers are at and which ones are being used for what and which ones are fallback and so on. You've got your API browser so you can see what the different APIs are and actually go through and figure out like, hey, do I need to use these APIs? Is it easier to use these APIs to do something than what I'm getting from the CLI or the web UI? And then of course, configuration just overall. We've already kind of configured this. I wouldn't go through and mess with this unless you know exactly what you're trying to do. Other than that, I would basically leave it alone for now, and as you learn, you can come in and tweak things or configure things if you need to. But again, when we set this up, we really did the configuration that we need. So really, users is going to be your big one. This is where you can put users in different groups. You can see your hosts. So the host machine we've got right now is just the server. You can see services that are available here as well. You can check out groups, so your user groups. You've got host groups, so you can set up groups of host machines as well. And then if there's any kind of net groups, which is not something I'm using right now, but you could set up net groups as well. I think this is kind of like the work group domain that you get like with Windows or something. Don't quote me on that. ID views, so you can see IDs. Auto number, so this just sets up your auto number for your user group roles and host group roles. And then subordinate IDs, not something I'm using. So really the big ones here are under identity is users, hosts, services, groups. Once you've gotten through that, over here under policy, you've got your pseudo roles, which you probably want to set up. Maybe your host-based access control, which is another one that's very important and very useful. And then under authentication, you've got certificates, your OTP tokens if you need them, and your radius server set up. I think everything else here, again, probably not something you're going to use much. You may use it more in the future. And then your network stuff where you can set up your different your network servers and auto mount those things so that you have shared locations or locations that get mounted automatically for people. Okay, that is the fast, quick, and dirty rundown of how to set these things up and how to add users if you want to add them. So let's go actually set up a client to connect through our FreeIPA system. I've got a system set up here. This is just a Ubuntu desktop system that's running in a virtual machine as well. So it'd be the same no matter if it's a virtual machine or not. But one thing I need to do is, and the first thing you should do after you set one up fresh is we're just going to go, and I don't want that one, I actually want this one. And we're going to go to the terminal, and I'll have my editor again just zoom in on this portion of the screen so that you guys don't have to look at the whole thing and it'll be a little easier to see. But I'll maximize this and I'll enlarge that font a bit. But first we're just going to do sudo apt update and then 2 ampersand sudo apt upgrade -y. And we'll let this thing go through and do its updates and upgrades because it's been a little while since I created it, but it shouldn't be much. Now there may be more just depending on if you're setting up a fresh system. So give it some time to go through and do what it needs to do to get those updates done. All right, that update didn't take very long, so we're just going to clear that out. And this is going to be a very similar setup to what we did with the server a while ago. So just kind of bear with me and we'll get through this. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to do Netbird status. And that's just so you can see that Netbird is not installed yet. So again, I want to go back and install Netbird on this machine. Let's see, I've got Netbird right here. I'm going to go back here. It's going to re-authenticate me, I imagine. No, it didn't do it. We'll click there and we're just going to copy this command. Now I don't know if I can paste this command in, but let's see, packages.netbird.io install.sh. So if we do that, maybe I can type it, but let me see if I can copy it and paste it in. So we'll go back over to this tab. No. So we're going to do curl-fssl https://packages.netbird.io/install.sh and then pipe that to the sh command. Curl not found, so we got to install curl. And we'll do that with sudo apt install curl and then a -y just to make it install pretty quickly. And we'll just try that other command again. And look at that, it's going to go grab everything that we need and get it installed here. Now the other one is this longer command that I'm going to have to type out by hand, so be patient as I get that one down. That's netbird up -- management URL, which has to be my URL at 33073. And then the admin URL is also my URL, and then we've got to do the setup key at the end. Okay, so let's go back, and that installed, which is awesome. And we're going to do netbird up -- management, and then setup key equals, I want to go get a setup key, but let me double check that I've got everything there correct, assuming I didn't make any typos. Yes, I think I do. So we'll go set up a management key. It's just going to re-authenticate me real quick. That's fine. And we're going to set up this key, and we're going to call this test ubuntu desktop. And I'll just generate a key real quick. I'm going to copy it. Again, I'll take this machine back off of here so it's not a big deal that you can see the key. All right, so we should now be on Netbird status. Good, so we're connected. We've got Netbird installed, which is awesome. I know that was painful. I apologize. It was just kind of my workaround to get it done since this is a VM and I couldn't paste in. We're going to do terminal, and let's just enlarge that guy. So just like before, we need to set up our host name and our static IP addresses. So let's do hostname CTL. And because we're not root, we need to do this sudo hostname CTL. And you can see it's set up as fedcomp test. So let's just do sudo hostname CTL hostname. And we'll call it fedcomp test.osia.local. And if we do our sudo hostname CTL again, we should have that now as our name, which is great. Let's just also do sudo nano /etc/hosts. No nano. Sudo apt install nano. Sorry guys. This is just some of the things you have to do when you set up new systems, I guess. So we'll try that again. There it is. And we're going to get rid of this first line. And now we'll go here and we'll put in what the OSIA host is. So we know what those IP addresses are. Now we can go back here and we could do cat and what we want is these two same things. So really we could just copy this, make this a little bit quicker, and just copy it with Control-Shift-C, and then go over to our other system here and do sudo nano etc hosts. It's not going to let me because I have it open in the background there, but I can just do Control-O. Now I can go back and let's edit it from here, and we can just do Control-Shift-V to paste that in. So what I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, whenever you go to look up either ipa.osia.local IPA or ipa.osia.local IPA, I want you to look and I want you to first try this one and then try this one, okay? So one way or the other, it's going to get to this thing. If it's on the local network, it'll get to it. If it's on the VPN network, it's going to get to it, which is great. And that's what I want. So I'm just going to save that with Control O and then Enter and then Control X to exit Nano. So now we've got our host file set up and it knows where our FreeIPA server is, which is important on your client. You want to make sure that it has that entry in there. And in fact, I can just keep going here since we're going to be using the command line. Let's just maximize that. And I'll actually make the font a little bit bigger for you guys. Maybe not quite that big. There we go. We'll clear that out. And we also need to do the same setup as getting everything set up like we did before. We've got a static IP address. We want to make sure that we've done that as well. So if I go to sudo cd etc netplan, okay, cd etc netplan. If I do an ls, I can see this entry right here. So I'm just going to change this entry, sudo nano /etc, or actually just 10. And right here where it says DHCP true and DHCP identifier MAC, we're just going to get rid of that line there with Control K. We're going to erase that and put in false. We're just going to go to the next line. We're going to space out right here under the DHCP. We're going to put in addresses and then colon and then open square bracket. The address we want for this machine, which is 103 and slash, no, this is 163, right? 63/24. And then we're going to close that square bracket. And then we're going to go to the next line and we're going to do routes under addresses. And we're going to go to the next line and we're going to get under the R, 2 more spaces and a hyphen. And that's 2:default. And then we're going to go all the way out into the T and we're going to do via and we're going to put in our gateway address. Just like that. And then we're going to go and space out under the R again. And we're going to do name servers. And then add 2 spaces and addresses. And then add 2 more spaces, which should be 10. And we'll put in whatever you want for your name server. In my case, it's the same as my gateway. And we'll just make sure there's an extra line there. And we'll do Control O, Enter, Control X. And now we're going to do sudo netplan try. And it's probably not going to come back. There it did. Yeah, it's fine. And because we didn't change the IP address, now we can do sudo netplan apply to apply those changes. Just give it a second. Now, if you're changing the IP address and you do the try, it's probably not going to come back and give you this information because you're changing it. So it's getting a different address to try out. But if you can always try to go back and connect to it through that new IP address. But it shouldn't take until you hit apply. After 119 seconds, it would have gone back on its own. So if you get locked away and you can't get to it, give it about 2 minutes and you should be able to get right back on it with the same IP address that it had. Then you can go in and try your apply and see if it works. All right, so we've got a static IP address set up for this machine. And if we do IP-BR-4A, we can see we've got our regular IP address, which is 163. And we've got our IP address from our Netbird server, which is great. So everything is there and we're up and running for all of those things. All right, so the next thing we need to do is actually go and grab the FreeIPA client software. So since this is Ubuntu, we're going to use apt, but if you're on Fedora, CentOS, those kind of things, you can use DNF. So I'm going to do sudo apt install FreeIPA-client like this. And I'm also going to get only on the Ubuntu Debian side, odd-job-mkhomedir. So this is going to let it make the home directory stuff that we're going to need after we get things installed. So you want to also include that one. I'm going to hit enter. It's going to say, are you sure? I'm going to say yes. And it's going to go out and grab these packages and get ready. Now, it's going to pop up with this screen and it should be, hey, we see this Kerberos realm. Is this the one you want to use? So if you've set up your Etsy host file like I just showed you, and you've set up your host name, it's going to detect this automatically and you don't have to type it. If it comes up blank, you'll have to type in the correct realm for your setup. In my case, it detected it, so I'm just going to tab to OK and hit enter. Now here it says your Kerberos servers for your realm. This is going to be the full thing. So we're going to do ipa.osia.local. I'm going to just tab over to OK. And then one more time, the administrative server for our Kerberos roles, it's the same one. It's going to be ipa.osia.local. And we're just going to hit it one more time and hit OK. It's going to go through and get things configured for us for the most part, which is great. Now that goes through and installs it and sets up a little bit of the base configuration, but there's still a configuration step that we need to do. So we're going to do sudo, and we're going to use that IPA command. And we're going to tell it sudo IPA-client dash, let me make sure I'm getting it right, install, and then space dash dash mk home dir. So this tells it when somebody logs in and they're authenticating for the first time with LDAP, I also want you to make them a home directory on the system. So if you don't want it to do that, don't include that. But that does make it hard for people to have a regular system. So consider using this flag for sure. And then since I didn't do the NTP server, I'm going to do also dash dash no dash NTP just to tell it, don't try to set up the NTP server with Crony or any of that stuff. It'll do it on its own. It just avoids you seeing an error in the output for the most part. So we're going to go with this. We're going to hit enter. It's going to say this program is going to set up the IPA client for 11.1 is fine. Yours might be newer if you're seeing this a long time down the road. And it says, provide the domain name of your IPA server. So I'm going to put in, not free, I'm going to put ipa.osia.local. And then it's going to say, oh, see, no, I didn't do that right. I'm going to control C. I'm going to go back in. I'm going to start this again. I messed up. So do control C if you did the same thing as me. It wants the domain, just the osia.local. And then it's going to be ipa.osia.local for this next one, for the IPA server name. I'm sorry, the domain name is just the last part of it, just the domain. This part is your server name, which is ipa.osia.local. In my case, you would put in your server name. Failure to use DNS to find your IPA server indicates that your resolve.conf file is not properly configured. Don't worry about this message. If you see this on Ubuntu, it's okay, and it says, proceed with fixed values and no DNS discovery. Now you see it has no as default, but I'm going to type yes because I do want to proceed with the fixed values that I'm giving it and no DNS discovery. And it's going to come up and say, okay, you're going to get the hostname fedcomptest.osia.local. Your realm is osia.local. Your DNS domain is osia.local. Your IPA server is ipa.osia.local. And again, base domain name is part of it is OSIA and part of it is local. So when you see this DC, that's a, can't remember what it stands for, but it's part of your domain. Domain component, that's what DC stands for. So it's a component of the domain. So that's why you have two of those there. Again, it has no defaulted. We're going to type yes because this is all correct. And it's going to go through and it's going to say skipping the Crony user authorized to enroll computers. This is important. What user do you want to use? I'm going to use the admin user. I could use my Brian user since I gave myself all those permissions when we were in the UI a while ago, but I'm going to use the admin user and it's going to ask me for the admin's password. So again, having a password manager handy really makes this easier because I'm going to copy that and I'm going to shift control V. It might show the text, so my editor is going to have to blur that out. It didn't, no problem. Sweet. It's going to go through the setup here. You can see it's going and grabbing the CA certificates from that authority. It's configured everything and it's done. It didn't take any time at all, and it just says right here, the IPA client install command was successful. So we've got a bunch of things that it's set up. Now this is on Ubuntu. So I'm going to just do a quick reboot. I'm going to say sudo reboot. It's going to start rebooting. You see it kicked me out of the terminal there. And if we go back over to the browser here on the desktop, you can see that it's actually rebooting itself. It's going to kick me out of the console as well. So we'll get back into it here in just a second. Let me give it a little time to get started back up. It's a VM. It shouldn't take very long. There we go. It's already back up. So it logged in automatically because I told it to do that. But I can go here and I can do log out. And log out. And we had a user called Bob Test. So once this comes back up for the login screen, there it goes. I don't know why it didn't want to come back up. So it has the default Ubuntu because it's a VM image that I downloaded, but then there's the user I logged in with a while ago, but we're going to use our Bob Test user. So let's do bob.test, and then I'm going to use the password that I gave him. It's going to reach out to the LDAP server and say, hey, can I authenticate this guy? And no, my password authentication wasn't right. Did I give it the right password? No, I'm still not getting the right password. What did I set for Bob Test? Now I got to go do exactly what I said. I forgot what I gave him. So we're going to go here to Bob test, and we're going to go to actions, and we're going to go to reset password, and I'm going to give him the one that I'm trying. Reset password. Okay, should be reset. Now, password expired. Okay, so that worked. It authenticated him. It was very quick, but it tells you the password expired and we need to change their password. So it wants the current one. And now it wants a new password. So I've set a new password and it says it's creating the directory and it's going to log Bob in and it's even going to start up the Ubuntu welcome screen. So we're going to get everything that you would expect out of this. We can just speed through this. And if we go and look, we can see that Bob has his own home right here. Now we can even do the terminal. I'm getting the wrong screen when I hit my hotkeys. That's the hard part about working in a browser, but that's okay. Terminal, and if we do PWD, you can see that we are in home Bob test. So I'll enlarge that font a little bit for you guys. There it is, home Bob test. So now we've got Bob that logged in to a machine where he had never logged in before using LDAP. It asked him to reset his password so he'd only be the only one that knows it. And it created his home directory when he successfully logged in. So now he's got the same setup as everybody else that would have a home directory, and his home directory is protected with the permissions you would expect in a Linux system. So this is really a nice way to get things set up. Now I know this seems like a lot of work, but now that we're set up, creating more users and having them log into machines and adding other machines is not that tricky. And if you're setting your machines up correctly to begin with, instead of just doing a VM where it gets DHCP with a weird host name, you could just, as you're creating it, give it a proper host name and a proper static IP address, and that's going to save you several of those steps that we just went through. Once you've got that, you're ready to install IPA client and go through that quick configuration and get it connected to your FreeIPA server, and now you've got this LDAP capability where you can go in and change Bob's functions. So if I do sudo apt update, it's going to ask for Bob's password. There we go. Now it says Bob test is not allowed to run sudo on fedcomp test. So on this machine, Bob is not allowed to run sudo. That is the cool thing about FreeIPA. I can come here and I could set up a policy that says host base access control and sudo. I can set up the sudo rules for Bob. I can set it so that Bob can run it on that machine, but maybe I don't want Bob to run it on every machine. Maybe it's just that one. So I can go through and set that up and I can make that functional here inside of the web user interface, which is super powerful when you're talking about distributing things out for users. It's just an amazing way to have things work, and I really, really think it's awesome. And tying it to Authentic is going to be great. So stay tuned in the series. I'm not going to do it every week, but the next one is going to be getting this tied to Authentic. After that, we're going to set up some applications that we can use with SSO using the LDAP stuff beyond just the operating system. It's really going to be awesome. So hope you guys will stick with me.